Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of SIYR. I'm your host, Joe Maligno, and with me tonight is Peter Giunta and Skyler DeAngelo. Skyler, I just want to say welcome back. It's been a few weeks since we've had you on. Skyler has been pushing it and working hard over the Board of Elections during the primary season that was just coming on, putting in a lot of work, helping make sure that the primaries go and everyone's votes get counted. Skyler, welcome back. Glad to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Joe. Pleasure.
You're very welcome, sir. All right, so we're just going to jump right into our show tonight. So we got a bunch of topics for you. We're going to start off with the topic of something that's been going on in our local New York college, Fordham University, which also happens to be my alma mater. I am a Fordham alum myself. But recently in the news, for those of you who haven't seen what's going on, there seems to be some controversy over a Republican student who, on the eve of the Tiananmen Square anniversary, posted a photo of himself holding a rifle or a gun. I'll have Peter go into the specifics of what it was, but point is he was holding a weapon in his hand, and he made a comment about the fact that back in China, you can't fight for your rights, you can't speak for your rights, and here you're able to. And he took a lot from it, and a lot is going on. Fordham almost brought it to the brink of expelling him, and now Fordham is dealing with some serious repercussions from it. So to kick that conversation off, I'm going to push it over to Peter. Why don't you give everybody a breakdown of what was going on, what happened with the Fordham student?
Yeah, so this kid, Austin Tong, he's a Chinese American. He immigrated here with his family when he was 6 years old. He's a student at Fordham University. He had posted recently a couple of conservative things on social media. One of them was a Instagram post with a picture of Police Captain David Dorn, and it had the caption on it was basically calling people hypocrites because he was killed by a group of African Americans. I think he was trying to channel in the black crime aspect to it, black on black crime rather. So the second picture he had posted, which the first one kind of got him in a little bit of trouble, but the second one is really what did him in with other people making nasty comments to him and death threats. He posted a picture on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. He had posted a picture holding an AR-15, an assault rifle. Some of the comments that he had gotten were pretty much along the lines of death threats. I'm going to stab you. I think one person said they were going to snap his neck. All nasty comments. The school had reacted by sending him, before they sent him a letter, he was interrogated by school safety agents from Fordham University, who had ultimately, as he found out in a letter from the school, had ultimately deemed him a safety risk. And part of the stipulation that they had, if he were to continue his education at the school, I don't know why he would do that after they said that he made other students feel unsafe and that he'd be a safety risk. But they said if he wanted to still be part of the school, he would only be allowed to do online classes. And he would also have to issue an apology letter to the student body, apologizing for making them feel unsafe. Okay, so he responded, and actually it worked out pretty, in my opinion, is working out decently for him. The NRA came in and they helped him bring a lawsuit against Fordham University that would sue for some damages to his person. But the big takeaway here, I think, and this is kind of a conversation that we've talked about before, is this could have the potential to really shake up how free speech is affected on college campuses. It's something we spoke about before. The second episode we did, I think one of the topics was free speech, and we had New York State College Republican Chairman Bobby Walker on to talk about it. and he acknowledged that there were some issues. This kid Austin's in a similar boat. That I don't necessarily know how this ends for him, but I do think he has a very principled case, that the college is attacking not only his Second Amendment right, but his First Amendment right to free speech. He's one of the stipulations that they had too is that he go for multicultural, multicultural sensitivity training, which is completely ridiculous considering this kid is an immigrant from another country. So I again, I don't know how this is going to end for him, but it seems like he's got a lot of juice in his case here. So I wish him the best of luck. I will throw in, because I'm not sure if you're going to mention it, Joe, but he's going to be on Laura Ingram's show tonight, 10 o'clock. So if anybody's watching, they want to learn more about what this kid Austin's going through, be sure to tune in and hear from him. But the New York State Federation of College Republicans shared a video that the NRA had put together. So if you want, you could even check out their pages and find the video. Really, really, really beautiful video. And it's really unfortunate what's happening to him.
Skyler, what's your thoughts on what's going on with Austin Thomas?
So it's very clear that when it comes to freedom of expression, our Constitution is very clear that Americans have the right to free speech. So in my opinion, even though campuses are public, are generally, not all of them are private, basically. A lot of them are public. You should basically be protecting all points of view, and people who are being harassed online shouldn't be. But it really just seems to be anybody that steers away from what I call and what political scientists, some political scientists at AEI have called the orthodoxy on campus, where it's basically a paradigm where the West is not the best, the West is bad. You can't really speak out against certain ideals within the orthodoxy because it's almost like a religion. And not to mention that this is a very uncontroversial thing to commemorate. At the bottom of the picture, he put "Don't Tread on Me," 1776, like 1984, 17, whatever, to basically link it with freedom movements and American freedom. And like this kid was just basically saying that, a totalitarian regime was attempted to be overcome by a man brave enough to stand in the way of a T-84 Russian tank. Now, I don't know about you, but I mean, I would find it very difficult to stand in front of a tank. But the point is that nothing should really happen to this kid. Nothing should have happened. It's just that my biggest problem with the orthodoxy, and I found this when I go to class for my master's degree program, is that a lot of people are very, very quick to attack right-wing authoritarianism, which they should, but they never see the truth, which is that it's just as bad as left-wing authoritarianism, that communism and fascism are both bad, and that you should call them both out. One shouldn't get a pass over the other.
No, it's very true. And I mean, I think to go with what your point with the orthodoxy, listen, here's the thing, and this isn't just in college campuses, this is anywhere in America. The baseline point is you can exercise your freedom of speech to the live long day till you're blue in the face, as long as it is the left agenda. That's it. That's really what it's coming down to. Our laws and our Constitution protect our freedom of speech. However, our politicians and other fellow citizens that are on the left are trying to do the exact opposite and not protect those rights that we have. They are doing everything and anything to try and silence us. I mean, we're going to go into this later on in the segment with the Black Lives Matter murals that are around the city. We're gonna touch base into it then, so I'll hold off fully going into that then. But the point is, that's really what it comes down to, is the fact that we're trying to be silenced, and our freedom of speech does not matter. Our freedom of speech is not protected. Our freedom of speech means nothing because it is not in with the left's agenda. That's basically what it is. And it's really funny because the left is, the party of tolerance, right? Apparently they're the party of tolerance. However, in my opinion, they're the most intolerant of tolerant people because they will only tolerate you if you agree with them. If you don't agree with them, they don't tolerate you whatsoever. And the funny thing is, you could be having any kind of political discourse with them, peaceful as it may be, as watch tone as possibly as it can be, and they still will come at you with, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a homophobe, you shouldn't be able to speak, you shouldn't have a platform, we're going to shut this person's down because everything you say is just hate speech. Meanwhile, they never are able to actually articulate what it is of our main points, of our ideals to that matter, what really makes it hate speech. I mean, I don't see how something as simple as saying things shouldn't be handed to you and you should have to work hard for what you get is racist or is sexist, or that means that it's hate speech. I mean, I was brought up on that ideal of working for what I have, working hard for what I have. And that's, that's where a lot of our mindsets are, but that's not something they want. A lot of the things is, now I'm getting into specifics here about policies and ideals of certain topics. But the point is that as long as you don't go with the left, you're shunned. You have no right to speak. And, it really upsets me what's going on with this particular incident because, like I said earlier when we started the segment, I happen to be a Fordham alum myself. And, I will say that Austin is in the Bronx campus. I happen to have been in the Lincoln Center campus. So Fordham has two campuses. There's one in Manhattan and one in the Bronx. I was in the Lincoln Center campus, but it was no different for me. It was no different for me than what is happening with Austin. I, throughout my time at Fordham, felt like I was very silent, or silenced, I should say. If I tried speaking up, I could notice that students were very aggressive towards me. Not only students, but I could also see that the majority of professors didn't agree with me. I kid you not, I once had a professor in Fordham where I remember doing a paper, like a midterm kind of paper, and I put in my analysis in a very conservative Republican fashion, and I did not get a good grade on it. And then towards the end of the year, when I had to submit a secondary paper, the secondary paper, I tried to go as neutral left as possible, and that paper got a much better grade. Now, obviously, you can make the argument that I just did better on one paper than the other. However, I think it's the fact that I was very extreme. Well, I wouldn't want to say extreme, but I was very, very clear that my views on the first paper were conservative, while my views on the other paper were kind of masked by a liberal view set or a complete neutral view set, and that got a better grade. So again, you can take that for what it is. That's my perception, but I will tell you this: there was plenty of moments when even President Father McSheen of Fordham University, there were times where he would send out mass emails to the Fordham University body and push some kind of liberal agenda. I remember when President Trump became president, following the election of President Trump, he sent out an email saying that Fordham would be a safe haven and that they are not going to comply with the federal government's mandates and the federal government's overlook or oversight on the immigration that was going on. And he said to make sure in this email, he said that all illegal immigrants in our school were safe. And I mean, again, you can take it for how you want to take it and look at it. But realistically, at the end of the day, what that is that we're going to be anti the right. We're going to be anti the current establishment. And the current establishment at that moment was the new administration coming in under President Trump. And it's very crazy for a school to take such a hard stance like that, one side, because now, again, what I felt from getting that email was, all right, this just reaffirms for me that I cannot do anything or show any kind of allegiance to where I stand because I may or may not be penalized for it. And I was not the only person. There was a few of us who we knew each other we knew that we were Republicans or that we were conservatives. So we did speak to each other about it. Again, it was a small group of us. there could have been more, but we weren't very outspoken. And we all felt the same way. We all felt that no matter what we said, we were penalized or were in the threat of being penalized for something. And I mean, to go back to something Peter was saying, like, I don't know if Peter, I don't think Peter mentioned this, but Austin put up a photo of him at his own home. Like, the photo is not him on Fordham campus. It's not him at his Fordham dorm. It's him at home. But yet something that he did on his private page in his own home on his own property was such a catalyst for him getting reprimanded by the school, to the point where the school was like, you cannot be on campus anymore. And basically, we don't want you back in the school. And if you have to be in the school, you have to do it online. But by the way, I'm sure they also want him to pay full salary, full scholarship, full tuition for Fordham. But yet he can only be on online classes, couldn't come back to campus. I mean, it's very ridiculous. And college is definitely the area that you're supposed to be able to broaden your horizons, broaden your views, and really find yourself and figure things out and see what the world's like. But how can you accomplish that when everything is so one-sided? This is what's happening across colleges all across America. We had, like Peter said, we had Bobby Walker, the president of the college Republicans. It's running rampant. It's got to stop. It's ridiculous because it's putting students in danger. It's putting students in a backseat position because now they're not being able to grow. They're not being able to progress. It's a horrible thing. And hopefully it seems like things might be starting to change. I mean, maybe this thing could be a big catalyst. I know that, like Peter said, the NRA is now involved and they're helping Austin sue. So hopefully we could turn the tide here and have everything go back. But I mean, Skyler, you know, you're not too far removed yourself from this area yourself. Is there any credence to the fact that, you know, there is definitely a somewhat kind of like underground, if underground, maybe push towards like actually reclaiming everything?
There are people certainly trying, but I think it really goes to NYU professor and clinical psychologist Jonathan Haidt. Jonathan Haidt wrote a book called Coddling of the American Mind, where he talks about how the battle on campus is basically, does the academy want to be a place where it pursues truth, or do they want to pursue social justice and other such now associated leftist aims? And I think it comes down to the fact that if people want to live in a world where they can freely question, they have to ask themselves that question. Do we want truth, or do we want to serve a political aim? And I think the academy should choose and be honest with their students when they come in as to where they actually are on that axis, so people can make an informed decision.
It's not a bad idea. That is something it would give. It's almost like a sorting hat kind of.
Yeah, like, you want to go to social justice U, cool.
Right.
You want to go to like truth U, also cool. Like, you know, like, but be honest about it.
Right. It's your prerogative, you know.
Yeah, be honest about it.
Right. And again, like I said, it's your prerogative as opposed to somebody forcing an ideal or some type of political agenda on you, which is to me is the worst thing. When I went to Fordham for graduate school, and when I went to College of Staten Island, I had one professor in particular who I always admired him because of the way he did it was, I'm going to give you the facts. You have brains. Use your own brains to come to a determination of whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not going to tell you what that was. And I took maybe 5 classes of this guy's. And let me just say something. Every class was the same thing. We all had our discussions. It was very open forum. He allowed us to discuss our opinions, but he would not give his own opinion. If you wanted to speak with him privately during office hours, that was a different story. But while he was teaching the class, it was for you to determine based on the facts presented what it was. Not, here's the facts, and I'm going to tell you what you need to think and what the facts are, you know, how to dissect the facts and figure an opinion out. Which is what we're seeing way too much of these days. You know, but another thing that we're seeing way too much of these days is crime. Aside from what's going on in the college campuses, another big thing that is running rampant, even more so these days, is crime. And crime specifically here in New York City. crime in Portland, crime in California, crime across many states all throughout the country, and it is increasing exponentially lately. Skyler, I know this is a hot topic for you, so I'm gonna let you kick this one off. What's your thoughts specifically? I want to target Portland right now, really quick. What's your thoughts on what's recently been going on with Portland and the push to try and take down the crime that's been on the rise there?
So with Portland, it's worse than crime because, and I'm tired of seeing all these posts on Facebook. The Trump administration is hiring secret police to take people away. And, it's exactly like a certain country that existed 70 years ago, which I won't name drop on the stream, but like, it's really nothing like that because in reality, Portland has actually been under siege. Maybe that's a little extreme, but there have been riotings and damage to property and just mayhem for 47 days in a row now. And this all started years ago. From 2016 to 2020, Portland has become a hotspot of very far left activity. And it's become a place for these people to organize. And I'm all for freedom of expression and I'm all for, getting together with people you agree with and trying to change things politically. But a lot of these people are going much farther than that. And they're not just protesting. They're radical. They're attacking people's property. And I saw an article recently that basically tried to imply that it's not violence when you attack people's private property because it's a process of bringing a more full justice for people that are not being listened to. And and I think that that's kind of ridiculous. And I think that the federal agents, as long as they're doing everything by the Constitution and the letter of the law, like they're suspects or they're in conspiracy to attack a building. I mean, in Portland, a federal law building was attacked. That's almost an insurrectionary act already in and of itself, on top of everything else that's been going on. So I don't think this is really the same thing as a secret police. And I don't think it's really that bad. Now, look, if things like that were happening, would we be for it? No, we wouldn't be. But like a lot of these people that are being arrested are actually actively engaging in violence. So I think a clear distinction has to be made between when government goes too far from like a libertarianist perspective and when government actually has to step in to restore law and order, because the local mayor in Portland is kind of more aligned with the more radical faction, gives into their demands, and doesn't actually see what's going on as a problem. The guy's out of his mind, and he's not keeping his people safe. All the people in Portland safe, regardless of background, income, whatever. He's not keeping people safe by allowing these people to just siege the city at will.
Yeah. Well, speaking of not being able to protect, I mean, President Trump has said, he's going to step in when need be to handle this outbreak of crime. I mean, he already threatened. I don't want to say threatened. I was just about to say threatened, but I don't want to say. But I mean, he already said something to Governor Cuomo, not President. That was a slip. Hopefully, that man will never be president. But he already said to Governor Cuomo that if he doesn't take care of the crime here in New York City, he's going to step right in and handle it himself. And I mean, we're already seeing that happen, aren't we, Peter? I mean, the president has deployed federal agents in Portland specifically to, crowd control what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, so just to clarify here, I love the outrage that people have, especially the mayor of New York City, about federal agents coming here to control the situation.
He said he was going to shoot the president today if he actually tries to do it.
If he actually was a good manager, and if he was actually a good bureaucrat, I guess we could say, right, he would already know that there's federal agents here in this city already who have been working for a very long time to detain criminal suspects. So there's no, when the president says that he's going to send federal agents here, they're already here. He's saying he's going to send more. For de Blasio to say, oh, if any of them come here, he's going to sue. They're here already. Our local councilman, Joe Borelli, who has a tie into the Trump world, he even acknowledged today that there are federal agents literally making arrests now in broad daylight, because that is their job. They're not doing anything that's shady or illegal. That's their job. they're detaining criminals, and I do think there has to be some sort of order restored sooner rather than later, because the longer it takes to restore order, the more damage is going to be done to the city. I mean, we already see the impact. Take COVID out of this equation, we already see the impact that, what is it now, 2 months of violent riots and protests. We see what that's done to an already crumbling economy, already crumbling business community here. There's stores in Manhattan that are still boarded up because they're closed still, but they're boarded up because their windows were smashed in during the protests. The city dragged their feet on responding to the Occupy City Hall group that had formed outside in City Hall Park. They dragged their feet in responding. Their butt was finally put to the fire, and as of early this morning, the rest of the protesters were taken out of there. The mayor's reason for doing it was, oh, because there's only homeless people in there now, so we can clear it all out. But it goes back to a bigger thing here. I think there's one thing of it being out of control because of protests and violent rioters, but then there's a legitimate crime aspect to this, and you see it with what's happening in New York City. You see what's happening in Chicago. There was a shooting at a funeral last night in Chicago. I think about 10 to 14 people were injured. 14 people were shot. 10 of them had passed, I believe, was the end number, but it resulted in shots fired from the people attending the funeral and the people that were firing on the funeral. New York City, you see crime has about nearly violent shootings actually has doubled from where it was this time last year. I think last year we were at 400 and change. This year we're at 800 and change. And it's interesting because you see there are certain politicians that are quick to lay blame on the federal government. Oh, this is Donald Trump's fault. Orange man bad. The usual easy thing to lay blame on. This is the federal government's fault. Crime is up because of the NYPD. We're going to blame the NYPD for crime being up. That's the newest theory here, conspiracy theory. No, this is just, in all actuality, this is the result of years of one-party rule, years of Democrat rule. We've seen from a couple of years ago, there was a push to decriminalize certain quality of life, certain crimes that involve quality of life, like public urination. Those are the types of things that cause people to wake up and vote. And I'm hoping that this November and next November, when we have our citywide general election for mayor and for city council, New York City voters are going to be aware of what's really at stake here. We've basically we've prepped everybody, and I say we as in just New York City government, prepped everybody for for kind of the quality of life, public urination, public intoxication. Let that stuff go. And now we've, this past year, we've gotten to the point where a lot of violent crimes, you saw this with criminal justice reform, a lot of violent crimes are no longer punishable are no longer subject to bail. So a lot of these people are getting out the same day they're getting picked up, going back out, doing another crime, and then sometimes not even getting picked up the second time, or if they do get picked up the second time, they're getting released again and then taken back in again. So I mean, it's just a recurring cycle. I'm hoping that people start to see that the city is not the same as it was 10 years ago. There was an article, and I'll end on this. There was an article in today's New York Post, which had said that a majority of New York City businesses are reconsidering doing business here because of what's going on. And it's funny. We shared it from the Staten Island SIYR page, and the caption we put with it was something like, "And they just realized this now." But I mean, the reality here is New York has had one of the worst business climates in the country for years because of taxes. Now we have a terrible business climate because of crime. And I think very soon you're going to start to see New Yorkers leaving here, not just because of taxes, but because of crime. It is becoming unsafe to live in the city. People do not feel safe to go outside, to walk to the store. It's very sad. It's very sad what's happening to the NYPD. It's very sad what's happening to law enforcement all over the country. This is People should not be mistaken. This is a war on order. This is a war on law enforcement. And for Democrats to turn, like Bill De Blasio to turn around, for Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago to turn around and say, we are going to sue if you send us, if you send law enforcement officers, federal law enforcement officers here to control the situation, we are going to sue you. It just shows that their interests are for the criminals. Their interests are not for the tax-paying, law-abiding citizens that reside in their city. And it is so unfortunate that there are still people who are brainwashed by the Democratic Party, that they continue to vote for a party who does not share their interests. And it just speaks to the crumbling of American society more than anything. It's really unfortunate, but the crime is definitely a sign of what's to come. If it's not addressed, it is going to continue to get worse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, here's the thing though. The crime is going to get worse, but could it just be because people are hungry and they're trying to get bread? I mean, isn't that what
Yes, we're gonna break into the Chanel and Gucci store because we want bread. Yes, that's definitely makes tons of sense.
I cannot believe how this woman was elected to Congress. I mean, the things she says are so outlandish, so wild. She actually said that the jump in crime rate are for those who are looting bread because they're trying to feed their families. Meanwhile, there's video footage of people breaking in to Chanel, to all these higher end stores, to Gucci, to the Burberry stores, all down Fifth Avenue. Then there's also there was a recent video which I tweeted out today about, or not today, yesterday I tweeted it out, but it was a bunch of people breaking into the Wells Fargo bank in Manhattan. I mean, do they make bread in Wells Fargo that I'm not aware about? I mean, I hope it makes sourdough bread.
Funny. It's funny you mentioned that though, because, and this is just going back to the previous topic we spoke about Austin Tong. Part of the reason why he owns an AR-15 is to protect himself. I mean, that's the reason why most people legally own guns, are to protect themselves. But in the video that Austin had put out, he says, knowing what it's like back in China, in communist China, where people don't have the ability to protect themselves, and I think this applies to this topic as well. He and his family purchased these guns legally to protect themselves. And I think that's something that's an icon. Obviously, it's iconic of the American experience. But look at what's happening in all of these major cities. You have people that are genuinely scared, and the police are supposed to protect them. And you have people legitimately calling for police to be defunded, for them to be disbanded. And how else are these people going to protect themselves from violent criminals if there are no police officers? Forget about the impact for a second that it's having on businesses. What about individuals? There's people that live in residential areas in Manhattan, and they, I see some of our friends in the Manhattan Young Republicans will share videos and pictures from their condos, but you could see what's happening down on the streets. It's really sad what's happening, but people just want to feel safe. People want to feel like they can protect themselves.
No, it's true. I actually have a coworker of mine who lives in Manhattan, and when all this stuff broke out, I mean, I'm not 100% sure on where he is right now, but I know when everything was going on, they felt so unsafe that they actually moved out of Manhattan temporarily to get away from everything. And it is, like you said, like some of our friends over in the Manhattan YRs, that's exactly what they're showing. Is they're showing right at the doorsteps of their apartments, right at the doorsteps of their houses. It's pandemonium, it's craziness. And and then they're just trying to have the one line of defense we have taken down, stripped down. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing. And what's astonishing, moreover, is the fact that you have a mayor who is now quoting that we are safer to this day because we have less incarcerated people than we have had since World War I. I don't know how that makes sense. I really do not know how that makes sense. That because less people are incarcerated, that means it equals safety. There's less people incarcerated because you let them out because of COVID, not because they magically became great citizens, ideal law-abiding citizens, and they deserved a second chance and being released out to the streets, and we're moving towards this utopia that they think is happening. No, you release them because of COVID. That is why the numbers are the lowest they're low, because you, Mayor de Blasio, released them. So I do not see how we're safe. And not only that, but there are numerous accounts of some of these released convicts that recommitted crimes once they got back out. I mean, there was the guy who robbed 4 banks in a row, got released on the bail reform, and then when he got released again, robbed another bank. Okay? There were people, there was a woman who was slashed by a convict after he got released. There was another incident of a robbery from another convict. I mean, it's all over the place that these people who are being released from jails are just becoming repeat offenders.
It was 13% of if I remember correctly, it was 13% of people that were released due to COVID. I think the final number was, so the people that were released from COVID, I'm just talking about, not the people that they've been releasing for other reasons. But the people with COVID, there was like 1,500 of them, I think, but 13% was the rate of people that were repeat offenders. So they committed some other crime after being released. That's a high number. If you really think about it, that's a high number.
That is a high number. It's a high number considering the small portion of people, so yes, it is a high number. Skyler, I want to get your thoughts on this, specifically closer to home here in New York City. And I mean, may I ask this question? Do you feel safer now that we have less incarcerated people? Because I sure as hell don't.
I mean, I don't personally feel safer knowing that the city's response to crime is to let people out. I mean, I remember someone saying a while ago, maybe a month ago, before more of the numbers came out on this, that, a very small amount of people that were released were committing crimes again, but 13% is exceptionally high in a social science setting. In a setting where you're talking about society and complex interaction between millions of people, it's a very high number in terms of a social science problem. So that's not really good at all. That's like at least 150 more crimes than there would have been. And I just don't like the attitude we have towards the Second Amendment in the city in general, where it's not seen as something that's utilized to protect yourself as much as it is crazy people that want to hurt people with legal guns, even though that's not even close to what a vast, vast, vast amount of people who own weapons even get close to thinking. So, I mean, I think that the island could see a spike in crime in some places, and that might spill over in the areas that people don't usually expect, and that's a possibility we have to be prepared for.
No, absolutely. It is a possibility we have to be there for. And something else that's going with this crime, going to these protesters / rioters / whatever it is you want to call them. But I think the best saying I've seen, and I think it came from Ben Shapiro, which was great, is a protester becomes a rioter the moment they break the law. And that's what a lot of these people are doing, which again, that whole duality astonishes me. Don't get me wrong, there are people who are protesting and protesting properly. There are protesters out there. There are people who are doing it peacefully. But when you're standing in front of a burning building and you're really going to sit there and tell me that it's been mostly peaceful, meanwhile you have a burning down building behind you. I mean, it's like that age-old saying, like, don't spit on my face and tell me that it's raining. Like, that's absolutely absurd. Yeah, there are peaceful protesters, but stop packaging these rioters and these criminals with those peaceful protesters. And the funny thing is that a lot of what I'm seeing is, and I'm seeing both sides of it, but a lot of what I'm seeing is people showing the rioters and the criminals and trying to justify them, trying to make them look as the peaceful ones. I mean, don't get me wrong, they are putting out the peaceful protesters, the people that are actually doing the right thing. However, the abundance is on the rioters and everything to that nature. And I'm talking about CNN. CNN is doing it. This is a liberal outlet. CNN is doing this. And so it's not like it's right-wing propaganda of we're trying to perpetuate this. CNN is doing it. MSNBC is doing it. Other ABC is doing it. Other liberal-oriented news outlets are showing the rioters and showing the carnage, but again, trying to justify them by showing this and saying mostly peaceful, or antagonized protesters. Where was the antagonization? The antagonization came from when George Floyd was killed, and they're continuing this thing in his name. I mean, it's ridiculous, and I can't stand for it. But I mean, it brings me to our next topic, actually, which is the Black Lives Matter murals that are being popping around all over the country, and specifically there's one here. Well, there's one in all 5 boroughs. There's one here in Staten Island. There's one in Brooklyn. There's one, but the one in main focus is the one in front of Trump Tower in Manhattan. So they figured that it would be a great idea to put it in front of Trump Tower. It'd be the big proverbial FU to President Trump. I mean, I really don't think that President Trump batted an eyelash about it at the end of the day. I mean, newsflash, everybody, the man's still your president, with or without that mural being in front of his office. So, I mean, it is what it is. But here's the thing, though. What I'm going to say is the Black Lives Matter movement, they have every right to have that mural there. It's an expression of their freedom of speech. I totally agree with them wanting it there and having it there. In the sense of that it's their right to have that. Fine, you guys want to have that. But what I find funny is, and Peter, I'm going to come over to you for this one. What I find funny is now apparently there seems to be talks about the Black Lives Matter mural being taken down now, because in reply to that, people wanted to have a MAGA 2020 mural put next to it. And of course, you can't have that because, again, as we said earlier, you can exercise your freedom of speech and your freedom of expression only when it goes to the left agenda, which the Black Lives Matter mural does, but not the MAGA 2020. So, Peter, what's your thoughts on that?
So it's kind of interesting. I mean, I'll start. I have a couple of thoughts on this. I'll start at the top, which is the
top, and we'll work down to the bottom.
Exactly. No, I mean the mural itself is part of, in my opinion, the left's smoke and mirror tactic for misleading African Americans, and I think it's part of their playbook of misleading minorities for a very long time. And we briefly touched on this in the last episode with Michael Bao. Where this is kind of a recurring theme in the Democratic Party's platform. One of the I guess before I get into the actual mural itself, one of the main asks of the Black Lives Matter movement, the protests, were rooted in it was rooted in demanding police reform, police accountability. There are legitimate advocates and people who are principled in their beliefs that want there to be some sort of change, systemic change. And New York City passed their budget for the next fiscal year a couple of weeks ago. The focus was going to be that in that budget there would be some sort of reforms to the NYPD. They would lose X amount of funding. They would lose certain units that are within their funding, like school safety would get moved into another city agency. Homeless services would be moved into another city agency. There's a couple of other programs that would have come out of the NYPD's budget and gone towards other places. The goal was to reduce the number of cops and essentially find other ways to have people respond to crimes. I think one of the ideas was redirect some money to social services so that therapists could be sent to respond to certain calls, using former gang members to defuse certain situations, violent situations. I don't understand. The logic was they would show up at a violent situation, and I think the way it was phrased, they would pull somebody into a van and basically take them out of the hostile, violent situation, which I'm pretty sure is illegal if you really think about it. But the point I'm trying to make is that there were this was kind of what the advocates had in their head. They wanted real reform, and instead they got told, okay, we're going to take $1 billion away from the NYPD, and you're going to get murals. You're going to get 5 murals in the boroughs. And to correct you, actually, Joe, there's only 4 murals currently. One on Staten Island, one in Brooklyn, one in Harlem, and the other one is outside of Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue.
Up in Manhattan. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the ironic part here, before I continue, is that it is actually illegal to have the research that I've done. It is illegal to have these words on the street. The Trump Tower one is actually perfectly fine because it's not obstructing any of the lane markings. But the murals that were painted on Richmond Terrace and in Brooklyn, and I have not seen the one in Harlem yet, but I would probably put money down that it is illegal as well, are in violation of US DOT federal safety standards, which state that you cannot have any roadway markings or roadway paint obstructing the roadway markings for like lane divider or a white dotted line just to delineate travel lanes, or a yellow lane marking a solid yellow line. Those cannot be obstructed. So I would be willing to argue. I would love to find an attorney that would argue that case actually, that those murals are illegal. And the other interesting thing I found is that the places, well, at least the one on Richmond Terrace is on street that's going to be resurfaced in the very near future. So it goes back to my point of smoke and mirror. These murals were painted under the guise that it was sending a message. It was going to be, the start of reform. I think that we are getting to a point where people are starting to wake up and realize how full of what Bill de Blasio is, in that these murals are nothing more than a political statement and nothing else. Not to mention we stole the idea from Washington D.C. where the mayor had put it. The mayor there had put it on one of their streets. And we've definitely, our city has politicized the hell out of it. What I found interesting also was that the mayor is on record as saying, he was asked a question about whether or not the city was going to clean up all the graffiti that was being placed by rioters and protesters, and the response was, no, we're not going to clean up the graffiti, but we're going to come back every time the Black Lives Matter mural on Fifth Avenue is defaced, and we're going to fix it. So, I mean, just that alone, I think, should irritate taxpayers, regardless of what their skin color is or their ethnicity. That alone should irritate them, because you pay to live, and it goes back to the quality of life thing. You pay to live in a place that has a decent quality of life. If graffiti and other minor crimes like that are not being addressed, then what does that say about the future of our city? But more importantly, the irony here, I think, is that, yeah, you're right. There's a couple of groups that wanna place Blue Lives Matter murals. They want to place the MAGA mural. The same way the city kind of just went about it without going through the right channels, and technically, I think, in violation of federal law, which, if any of you are familiar with the process for getting a stop sign or a speed bump installed, know that DOT will follow the federal safety standards to a T before installing a stop sign or street light or speed bump. So I found it ironic that they were willing to violate that rule in for this. But if somebody from Blue Lives Matter did that, painted a mural, or if somebody painted a Trump mural, you could bet your butt that the city would be there within hours to paint over it. Whether it's graffitied on a wall or painted on the street. As a matter of fact, I challenge anybody to go do that on a street, on the literal street. And I would love to see how quick DOT responds to it. After the mayor realizes it's happened. But I'll end on this last point and then give it back to you, Joe. The Scott Lebedo, the patriot artist that we love, who recently did who does all of the American flag paintings on Staten Island for the most part, but recently did a work of art outside the 122 precinct. Just added another one. It's a blue line that goes along a portion of the median on Highland Boulevard. It was defaced literally within hours of it being put down. Some protester had come and wrote Black Lives Matter on it, which, again, I feel like you can't criticize one if you're not going to acknowledge the fact that the Black Lives Matter mural in Manhattan was defaced. Honestly, I think from a First Amendment standpoint, everybody has the right to get their message across. I necessarily don't agree that it's painted, in the middle of the street in front of Trump Tower, because it's more about making a political statement instead of affecting real change. But that's a separate issue. But one of Scott's latest works of art, in addition to the blue line, was a beautiful banner of Mayor Bill de Blasio that hung on the Staten Island Expressway with the decapitated Statue of Liberty head. This is a true Scott Lebedo work of art. But it really speaks to what Staten Islanders think of Bill de Blasio, what he's done to the city. I think it's sad that this guy ran for president, and it's sad, but it's funny that he lost the way he did, that he had to drop out the way he did. But I really do think Bill de Blasio is a terrible politician, and I hope that the world is watching what he's doing right now, so that this guy has absolutely no political career after, him and his family have no political career after next November.
He's an absolute horrible mayor. Absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. But all right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wrap it up for the night with one final question, our typical final question of the night. Skyler, I'm going to start off to you. The final question of the night is going to be this. While I do agree, I think we all agree here that the Black Lives Matter mural is an expression of their expression of their freedom of speech, and it should be protected. And it should be there. They should have the ability to do what they're doing. However, here's the question. And Peter, you brought up a great point. Like, we need to acknowledge the fact that if we exercise the same right and something of ours is defaced, we have to acknowledge also that we can't just pout and run amok about it when the same things happen in the Black Lives Matter mural. It's being defaced as well. So, I mean, it's a give and take. It's a give and take here. But the final question of the night is, Black Lives Matter mural being up. Do you think that the mural itself being there, being put up, does it actually do anything? Does it actually do anything in the sense of pushing for any kind of reform or actually even saving a life in the future? Skyler, what's your thoughts?
Not in a concrete way, no. But I guess there are some people that could see it and maybe want to get involved on what they feel are real social justice or criminal justice issues, but the mural itself, no, doesn't really do anything.
Peter, sit back at you. Same question. Do you think that the Black Lives mural actually is doing anything itself being put there?
Smoke and mirrors. It is literally achieving nothing. And again, going back to what I said, the city had an opportunity to put reform out in front with their budget. The mayor really advocated for for there not to be any concrete reform. It was more, what can we do that looks like reform? And now, what are we, 2 weeks after the city passed their budget, and we went from, we're going to reduce the number of cops to, we're going to increase the number of cops in high crime neighborhoods, and there's no more this anti-crime unit, but we're going to take those cops and just put them. It basically defeats the purpose. We're basically putting ourselves back where we were. And again, I'm not saying that it's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying it's very hypocritical. It goes to show that they never planned on there being any real reform. They still don't plan on there being any real reform. And like most other things, it seems to be day to day with this city government and state government, where a lot of the policies policy decisions are made on a whim. It's almost as if they throw crap at the wall and they see what sticks for that day, and they go with it. But smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors, guys. You heard it here first from Peter Giunta. There's smoke and mirrors. Okay, so my final point on this whole topic thing is I do find it funny, and I do find it comical that you have someone like Chris Cuomo, President Cuomo's brother, who was outraged by the fact that President Trump was taking photos in the Oval Office with Goya products and showing support and solidarity for Goya, who is literally the ideal example of what you can be in America and the American dream. President Trump's doing that. He was outraged how the president has time to do that. Meanwhile, our dear Mayor de Blasio has time to actually go out there and paint the Black Lives mural. Again, all comes down to the fact of if it's on the left's liberal agenda, it's totally fine. If it's not, you might as well be the devil. So I'm going to end it here on that tonight. Come back next week. Join myself, Peter, and Skyler, 8 o'clock on Wednesday, guys. By the way, for all the Democrats out there who are still looking for President Trump's tax returns, he emailed them to Hillary, all right? So you should have them soon. Have a good night, everyone.